Begin today the Gemara on the Peches Amud Beis, 7 lines from the bottom of the Amud. It said in the Mishnah, Tzricha get mizeh mizeh. The case we're speaking about over here is a woman, her husband went overseas, and now Eid Echad came and said that her husband died. She got remarried, and now her husband shows up. So the Mishnah says in such a case, she's going to have to get a get from her first husband and her second husband. We understand if we want her to leave her first husband, she has to have a get from him because she was married to him. But from the second husband, why does she have to have a get? She could just walk away from him. Znus ba'almuhu. The relation she had with him turns out to be znus. It turns out to be a relation without a marriage at all because she was already an Eishes Ish. So what does she need a get from him? Amar Rav Huna, so Rav Huna answers, it's all midrabanan, the get here. Gzeira, because there's a decree, Shema Yoimru, people that see this might say that what really happened here? Girish Zeh, the first husband divorced her. He left overseas and he divorced her. And Vanasa Zeh, and she got married to the second husband. And Venimtsis, Eishesish Yetze B'loi Get, and now they see that she's leaving the second husband without a get, and they'll think that she's leaving, she's an Eishesish without a get. So therefore, the Chacham will geyser that she also needs a get from the second husband. Frag the Gemara, if this is what we're concerned about, Ihachi, Sefer Diktani, there's the next Mishnah, and there it says as follows. Amrullah Meis Bailech. And Eid Echad came along and said that your husband passed away. And she got remarried to another, she got married, that is, to a second person. But over here, the case was Viniskacha. There was only a Kiddushin, which is the first stage of marriage. There was no relations yet. No yichud, no bia. And her first husband shows up. So since she never had any relations with the second husband, so the Mishnah says, she can go back to the first husband. So the question of the Gemara is, how could she just simply go back to her first husband? Why are we not concerned that people are going to say, look, the second husband made a kiddushin, probably because the first husband divorced her already, so how could she just go back to the first husband? She's an Eishes Ish. And says the Gemara, Hasam Nami, there as well, what the halacha there is, this is part of the question actually. Hasam Nami, Neime, why aren't we concerned over there as well that people are going to say, Girish Zeh, the first husband that went overseas divorced her, and the Kiddush Zeh, and the second husband now was Mekadesh her, and Venimtzis, Eishes Ish, Yetzis, Shalei Beget, and so this Eishes Ish that's going to leave her second husband and go back to the first marriage is leaving without a get. Answers the Gemara, you're right. La'olam boy a get. Over there, when it says that she can go back to her first husband, it doesn't mean without a get. She has to get a get from a second husband, and then she can go back to her first husband. Right? So the chiddush over there is in our Mishnah, she has to leave from both of the husbands, the first and the second, because she already had relations with the second husband. She has to leave altogether. Here, the second husband was only mekadesher, so she can go back to the first husband, but with a get. Fragt the Gemara, how could she go back to the first husband? Ihachi, if so, nimtza zeh machze gerushasei mishenesarsa. If so, the first husband is returning a wife that he divorced once this wife already had a kiddushin with someone else. That's what people are going to say. That's what it looks like. What's the halacha? Is a person allowed to marry his divorced wife? If she got married to someone else, he's not allowed to remarry his divorced wife. So over here, that's what it looks like it happened. She left him, and people are saying that he divorced her, and she already had a kiddushin with someone else, and now he's divorcing her, and she's going back to her first husband. So why won't people think that this is also not allowed? And says the Gemara, no, there's an opinion that says that it's allowed. Rabbi Yosi ben Kippur. Rabbi Yosi ben Kippur says that this is allowed. This is brought earlier in the Masechta here. The Amar, he says, min anisue nasura. A wife that you divorced, and she went and got fully married to someone else, then you're not allowed to remarry her. But mina eidis muteres, if you divorced her and she went and had eidis in the first stage of marriage with someone else, then she could go back to her first husband. So that's not a problem. But the Gemara asks weiter that you see from the Mishnah later that she does not need a get from the second husband in that case there when the second husband was only Mekadesher. Why? Hamidiktani Seife, it says there in the Seife that Afal Pi Shenosan La Achrin Get. If this second husband that was only Ma'areser, only the first stage of marriage, if he gave her a get, so then that get will not passel her from marrying a kohen. What does this mean? Why not? Because that get that the second husband gives her is not a get really. It's nothing. she's still an Eishes Ish. She's still married to the first husband. So what this get is, if this get is nothing, so then she's not going to become Pasal to a Kayin. So from this we understand the loy boye get, that when she leaves the second husband to go back to the first husband, she does not need a get first. Why? The boye get, if she would need a get, even if that get is only needed midrabanon, but amayle paslam and akona. If this get has some significance, it's a real get, so then why would we say that it doesn't pasla from kahuna? So from here, the Gemara proves that she does not need a get at all. Ella, says the Gemara, the reason why you don't need a get over here in this case is because Seifa, in the Seifa of the Mishnah, here again, the case in the Seifa is when her husband went overseas and another person was only Mekadesher, not yet a full marriage. Over there, the reason you don't need a get is because Amri Kiddushe Tos Hava. People are going to understand that the second Kiddushin was a mistake. And therefore, the fact that she's leaving and going back to her first husband, nobody will make a mistake to say that she's an Eishes Ish. People will know that the second marriage, the second Kiddushin was a mistake. If you rely on people understanding that there, so you don't require a get, Reisha Nami, so in the Reisha as well, when she got fully married to another person, so Amri Nisui Ta'as Hava, when the first husband shows up, won't people understand that the second marriage was a mistake and therefore she can go back to her first husband and she shouldn't need a get from the second husband? Or even if she can't go back to her first husband, but she shouldn't need a get from the second husband. There's no mistake over here that people are going to make about this. And says the Gemara that Kansua Rabbanon, regarding the Reisha of the Mishnah, when she got fully married to someone else, there was an Aveda done over here. As Rashi explained in the Mishnah, even though she was relying on the words of an Eidechot, she should have made her own investigation. So there is somewhat of an Aveda here, so therefore there's a Knas. Rabbanon gave her a Knas. If there was a Kiddushin done with a second husband, why should there not be a Knas over there as well? She should have been more careful before she allows another person to be Mekadesher. And says the Gemara, no, you can't compare it. Reisha of the Isura, in the Reisha, then our Mishnah that we're speaking about over here, she went and got fully married to another person and they had relations already. So this is a Isser. She's an Eishes Ish. And she went and had relations with another person. She should have been more careful. Over here, Kansua. Here, Chacham gave her a Knas that she's going to need a get from the second husband. Seifa, the of the Isura. In the Seifa of the Mishnah, though, when another person was Mekadesher, but there was no relations yet, the marriage was not done yet, so then, since she didn't do an Isser, Lo Kansua Rabbanon. Chachamim did not give her a Knas. The point over here, the way Rashi explains this is, this chashash that the Gemara mentioned before, that we're concerned that people are going to say that this is an Eishes Ish that's leaving without a get, it's really not such a strong concern. We could really rely on people knowing what happened, that the second marriage was a mistake. But it's somewhat of a concern. So in a case where she did an Aveda, then Chachamim were machmer to be concerned about that. But in a case where she did not do an Aveda, so Chachamim were mekel. Chachamim allowed her to leave the second husband and go back to her first husband without a get. Then it said in the Mishnah, Ein lo ksubah, she gets no ksubah, not from the first husband, not from the second husband. Why? So the Gemara explains, my time, takina la rabbanan ksubah. What's b'chlal the reason why Chachamim instituted that a woman, when she gets divorced or her husband passes away, that he has to give her ksubah money, and that is kadesh loy tehei kala bein of loy tzia. A person shouldn't think, and it shouldn't be so light in his eyes to divorce his wife. If a person knows that he can just divorce his wife and send her away without a penny, so then one day he's married to this woman, it just send it. So in order it shouldn't be so easy and light in his eyes, you have to pay ksuba money. But over here, over here, since we want her to leave the first and second husband, so over here there's no reason to impose upon the husband to pay ksuba money. We want him to send her away. So therefore, there's no ksuba that's shaykh in this case. Then it said, Ein la peiris, v'le mezainis, v'le balois. She doesn't get any of the fruits from what her husband ate from her properties, or any sustenance. He doesn't have to pay up for anything that she borrowed for her food. Balois, any of the worn out clothing she had, he doesn't have to pay her, give her back. Why not? So the Gemara says that goes along with the ksubah. T'nai ksubah, ksubah dami. These are things that are written as a condition in the ksubah. So just like she doesn't get the money of the ksubah, she doesn't get any of these things that are written in the ksubah. And the Mishnah said, Notla mizeh mizeh. If she did take the ksubah from the first husband or the second husband, she has to return the money. Isn't that obvious? If she doesn't deserve getting this ksubah, so why should she not have to return what she took? Answers the Gemara, Chiddush here is, I would think to say, Kivin the Tafsa. Once she grabbed this ksuba money, we don't take it away from her. And the Rishonim explained that the Gemara here is speaking about that she took this money without Eidim. So if she took this money, nobody saw that she took this money from her husband, she's coming and admitting and telling us that she took this money from the husband, but we didn't see it. So she has what's called a migu. She could have said that I never took this money from you. This is my money. So maybe in such a case, we should allow her to keep the money. So therefore, Kamash Malan, that's the Chiddush of our Mishnah, that nevertheless, this is not her money. We don't accept any migu here, and she's going to have to return this money to her husband that's not hers. Then the Mishnah said, Havlad Mamzer, that a child that's born from the second marriage or from the first marriage, either way, the child is a mamzer. So now, the chiddush of this Mishnah here is, any child born from the second marriage is very simply understood why the child is a mamzer. She was an Eishes Ish from the first marriage, and she had a child from the second marriage, so that child is a child born from an Eishes Ish. That child is a mamzer. The question though is, if she goes back to her first husband, and she has a child, why would the child be a mamzer? Since the second marriage never took effect and she's just going back to her first husband, Minat Torah, the first marriage is still there. So the child shouldn't be a mamzer. True, the Rabbanan were geyser, she should leave her first husband. So Minat Torah, she's not supposed to go back to him. But just because with the Rabbanan they were geyser, that makes a child a mamzer? How could Chachamim turn a child into a mamzer? That's the question the Gemara will address here, but the Gemara does not address this right in the beginning and directly. The Gemara will first bring from another place, Benegay to Truma, where you find the Kayach of Chachamim. And this is actually the opening of a long sugi here of about a blot and a half, where the Chachamim, where the Gemara that is going to discuss the Kayach of Chachamim to uproot a mitzvah min ha-Torah or create a takana that goes against something that it says in the Torah. How far does the Kayach of the Chachamim go? This case of making a child a mamzer is one example, and the Gemara will bring another example regarding Truma. So it goes through a sort of a lengthy discussion regarding Truma, and then it comes back to our Mishnah regarding a mamzer. Let's see. So Tanan Asam, we learned in the Mishnah in Masechta Trumas that Ein Tarmim min Atame ala Tar. Chachamim instituted that you can't take Truma if you have produce, and part of it is Tameh, and part of it is Tar. You can't take the Truma from what's Tameh on what's Tar. You're going to give the Kayin Tameh produce. What happens if you give the Kayin Tameh produce? Kayin can't eat it. Can't eat Truma that's Tameh. What is he going to do with it? The only thing he can do with it is use it as fuel for a fire. So you can't give Kayin Truma in a way that he has a major loss. He's relying on this food to eat and he can't eat it. That's Chachamim's takana. Now, but v'im taram b'sheigig. If b'sheigig you gave the Truma from produce that's Tameh, you didn't realize it's Tameh. Truma say Truma. So then the Truma takes effect and it's good. Amazing. If you did this intentionally, so then le'asa v'leiklum. What you did is nothing. That's the expression of that Mishnah. Leiklum, it's nothing. The question now is, the Gemara is going to bring two opinions. What does it mean it's nothing? My le'asa v'leiklum. To what extent does it mean that because you gave a Truma in a way that Chachamim said you should not, to how far do we say that this Truma is nothing? So there's two opinions there. Rav Chisda said, Le'asa v'leiklum kol ikr. The meaning of the words of the Mishnah mean literally, what you did is completely worthless. And he explains what that means. Even that measure, that amount of produce that you gave for Truma as well is not Truma. It's hadalativle. It's still tevel. It's still considered to be part of the rest of the produce, where it's before you take any truma of it, it's called tevel, and you can't eat it at all. So no truma took effect at all, nothing. That's Rav Chisda's opinion. Rav Nassim ben Rabbi Yishia says, no, it doesn't go so far. Le'asa v'leiklum, what this means is, l'sake nesashirayim. Every time you give truma, so there's two things that happen. Number one, there's the truma that you took that took effect on that produce, that it is truma. And number two, the rest of the produce is now fixed. What does it mean fixed? Now you can go ahead and eat it. You took off the truma, so it's not tevel anymore. Now you can go ahead and eat it. So Rav Nassim ben Rabbi Yishia says that regarding the shirayim, regarding all the rest that you want to go ahead and eat because you now separated the truma, no, you can't eat it. You're going to have to give truma again. But regarding the truma tmeya that you gave, that truma tmeya did take effect. It is truma. So it doesn't mean completely v'leiklum. So now the Gemara explains what the basis of their argument is. Rav Chisda does not say, like Rav Nosson bar Abba Yeshia says, that the Truma did take effect, but you just have to give Truma again. The Yamet Havet Truma. If you're going to say that this Tomei Truma did take effect, so now Zimnin the Pasha. Chachamim made a gzeira here that sometimes people will be very negligent about this. V'loi mafresh, and they're not going to take Truma a second time. If you tell a person that the Truma you just separated did not take effect at all, so then he understands he has to give Truma again. But you're going to tell him the Truma you gave took effect, and the Kohen keeps that. But now you got to give Truma a second time. So many people will be negligent about it. They'll say, look, the first Truma took effect. So therefore, Rav Chisda says, we say that nothing took effect at all. You have to give Truma a second time because the first Truma was not Truma. That was the basis of Le'asav Le'klum. It's a Gzeira Midrabanan. The Gemara. So before, as I said, the Gemara is going to discuss here. Right here, you see this concept that because we're afraid that a person might be negligent, Chachamim uproot this whole Truma that really Menatayre did take effect. The Gemara will address that soon. But before this, the Gemara first will ask various different questions from other Mishnayos regarding this halacha of Truma here, both on Rav Chisda's opinion and Rav Nosson bar Abba Yeshia's opinion. So first, the Gemara asks on Rav Chisda's opinion. So Rav Chisda over here said that the Truma does not take effect at all. So Maishna, how is this different? Mehadetnan, from another Mishnah where we learned as follows. Hatayrim kishus, a person that was separating Truma kishus, some kind of melon. Cucumbers, okay. So he was separating Truma and he wanted to give cucumbers. And v'nimtzis mara, it came out that the cucumbers were not good, they were sour or they were bitter, so it's not good produce, so he was giving it for Truma. Avatiach, he wanted to give a nice fresh watermelon for Truma, and instead, v'nimtzis soruach, it was a spoiled watermelon and it wasn't good. So the Mishnah here says, Truma, so the Truma does take effect, but but he should also give a Truma a second time, because what he gave was spoiled. So what's the question? Here we see that the Truma takes effect, but he has to give Truma a second time. What did Rav Chisda say? The Truma doesn't take effect at all. When you give Tomei Truma, you got to do the whole Truma over again. So the Gemara says, what kind of question is this? Shegig amazed karam? Is he asking a question from a case of a shegig to a case of a b'mezid? Shegig lo'yavadisura. Over here, this person wanted to give fresh watermelon or fresh cucumbers, and it turned out to be sour, to be spoiled. So over there we say that the Truma took effect, but he should just give it a second time, because he didn't do any Yisr. But over here, when it comes to the case of the Truma Tmeya, since he b'mezid separated Tomei Truma, over here Rav Chisda says that the Mishnah is saying that the Truma does not take effect at all. But now the Gemara says, V'rami shegig ha-shegig, but there actually is a question that you can ask, there's a contradiction here, from another case where what the Truma that he gave was not good Truma, but it was only b'shegig. And there's a contradiction regarding this. Why? Because Hacha Katani, over here it says that b'shegig Truma se Truma. That b'shegig he gave the Truma and he thought he's giving fresh produce, and it turned out to be not fresh. Or actually, again, going back to the Mishnah before. Okay, when it says Hacha Katani, going back to the Mishnah we said before, when a person gives Tomei Truma. So what did it say? If a person gave Tomei Truma and he didn't realize it was b'shegig, the Truma is good. You don't have to do anything additional. That's it. The Truma is good and it's good to go. That's what it said before. And Hasam Ketani, Truma, and over there it says when a person wanted to give fresh produce and it came out to be spoiled, so it says there that the Truma took effect, but v'yachze v'yitre. But he should give Truma a second time, because it turned out to be spoiled produce. So what's the difference? In both cases, it's a shaygig. Answers the Gemara, there is a difference. Hasam, in the case where the produce he gave turned out to be spoiled, we are more stringent with him. And the reason is, Hasam shaygig karav lemezid. That is a shaygig, he didn't do it intentionally, but it's a kind of a shaygig that's very close to being intentional. Why? The bailele mitame. If you're giving produce for a kaim, for truma, you should taste it, you should take a look to see if this is good. If the fact that you turned out to be spoiled is a certain level of negligence, you should have paid attention to what he's doing.
Is he allowed to taste the truma?
It's a good question. Before you give the truma, you could taste it. Yeah, right. So then you could see what he's giving. Another contradiction that was asked regarding a case where a person b'mezid gave truma that's not good. So the stira here is hacha katani. What does it say here? B'mezid le'yasa klum. That if you give b'mezid tamei truma, it doesn't take effect at all. According to Rav Chisda, the whole truma did not take effect at all. And Hasam Tnan, there's another Mishnah where it says as follows: Hatayrim, a person that takes truma mishe'ein nakuv al nakuv. There are two kinds of flower pots. There's a perforated flower pot, and there, whatever produce grows in it is chayiv in truma min atayra, because it has holes that it takes some nourishment from the ground, from Eretz Yisrael, so therefore it's chayiv in truma. And then there's a flower pot that is not perforated. So then this is not min atayra, there's no truma. There's only midrabanan, a mitzvah of truma. So here this person took truma from if the produce that grew in a flower pot that's not even chayiv in truma at all. And he took truma from there on the flower pot, what grew there, what is chayiv in truma min atayra. So the Mishnah there says truma, that it is truma, but v'yachzer v'yitraim. You should take truma a second time. So this was done b'mezid. He intentionally gave truma from produce that's not even chayiv in truma. And over here it says the truma takes effect, but take truma a second time. What did Rav Chisda say before? When you give tamei truma, it doesn't take effect at all. What's the difference? Answers the Gemara. The difference is as follows: Betrei mani tzayis. Since over here, in this case of the two different flower pots, so since it's two separate flower pots, if we tell him that he has to give truma over again, the person will understand this, and he'll see that the truma was not good, and he'll listen to us to give it again. The reason is he's going to understand that there's one flower pot, a different flower pot, so I can't give truma from one over the other, and he's going to remember to give truma again. But over here, b'chad mana, if he's giving truma from produce that grew in the same flower pot or in the same field, and you tell him he has to give truma over again, even though the first truma took effect, lo yitzayis. Over here, the person is not going to listen to us. And that's why by the tamei truma, we say that we're afraid he'll be negligent and not give it again, so the truma does not take effect at all. So this is all questions the Gemara was asking on Rav Chisda's opinion that said that the truma does not take effect at all. Now there was the other opinion before. Rav Nosson bar Aishi adam le'asav klum. What did Rav Nosson bar Aishi say? When a person gives tamei truma and the Mishnah said that he did nothing, it doesn't mean the truma that he gave did not take effect. The truma took effect, but rather all it means is l'sakin shirayim, that for the leftovers that he wants to go ahead and eat, he has to give truma a second time. Aval truma, the first tamei truma that he gave did take effect. So the question is, there's another part of the Mishnah that we just quoted, and over there the Mishnah says, Ma'ishna, what would be the difference, Ma'adet Nan? From this that it says over there in that Mishnah, and over here the case is in the reverse. Again, we're talking about two flower pots, one is perforated and one is not, and only from the perforated flower pot is there a chiyuv of truma min atayra, and over here what the person did is, min hanokov al she'ein nokov. He gave truma from the flower pot which has a hole in it, so that's chayiv and truma min atayra, and he gave truma from there al she'ein nokov, on the other flower pot that's not even chayiv truma at all min atayra. So truma say truma. So this truma that he gave to the kohen will be good truma, but v'loy toichal, you can't eat from it. You're going to have to give truma for this a second time. The reason is you separated this truma from this flower pot, which is chayiv min atayra. For what? For other produce that's not even chayiv in truma min atayra. So really min atayra, this truma does not take effect. Imagine a person is taking truma from produce of Eretz Yisrael for produce that grew in Chutz La'aretz. That truma didn't take effect at all. The produce in Chutz La'aretz is potted from truma. So min atayra, the produce that grows in this flower pot that's not perforated is not chayiv in truma at all. So therefore min atayra, this truma is not truma. So what we say is midrabanan, this truma took effect, but you're going to have to take truma again from this produce itself. It's as if it's not truma yet. Min atayra, it's not truma yet. You're going to have to take truma a second time. So the question is, if over here we see that you have to take the truma a second time, why before, when a person takes the tamei truma, do we say that the truma takes effect and he does not have to take truma a second time? Answers the Gemara, it's not the same thing. Shani hacha, over here, when you're giving tamei truma on your tahir produce, the mederaisa truma mal yisahi. Over here, min atayra, this truma totally took effect. You can't compare it to the case where you took truma for produce that grew in a flower pot that's not perforated. Over there, the whole min atayra, it's like taking truma from what's in Eretz Yisrael to what grew in Chutz La'aretz. It never took effect. But over here, it's good truma. Min atayra, giving tamei truma is acceptable. Where do we see this? Like Rabbi Loi said, how do I know if you have produce and you have bad quality and good quality, and you give from the bad quality the truma for the good quality? How do I know that the truma takes effect? You should not have an aveda ba'arimchem as chalbay mimeno. If you give from your best for the truma. So what do we see from this? V'im ein kadosh, if when you gave what's not good quality, never took effect at all, and you're going to have to give the truma all over again, the is chet lama. Why would it be an aved if you give bad quality? Torah is saying, don't give bad quality. That means even when you give the bad quality, the truma took effect. Elamai, there's a chet that you chose to give bad quality. So from here we see that even if you give bad quality, it takes effect. Chet lama, why otherwise, why would it be a chet? So mikam, from here I see, l'tayrim and arala yafe, when you give from the bad quality. For good quality, shetruma se truma, that the truma takes effect. And it's the same thing also, even regarding tamei truma. You're giving a kohen really bad quality. You're giving him tamei truma, you can't even eat it at all. The only thing he can do is use it as fuel. But still, the truma takes effect. So that's why, in this case, minat Torah, you don't have to give truma over again for this, from this.
But Nakav al-Shenin Nakav, he never gave Truma.
That's true. That's why he has to. Midrabanan though, there were guys that the truma should take effect, but he's going to have to give the truma all over again because it's as if there was no truma taken over here. Correct. Amalei Rabba let Rav Chisda.
Same way they gave something, then you find out that it's not good. You have to give again. But if it's spoiled,
right.
You have to give again.
Anachanami has to give again, but over there it's another case. Over there the Gemara says because it's Shege Karav Lemezid. Over there the Gemara gave a different reason because it's Shege Karav Lemezid, so therefore he has to give it again. So it's almost like he should have tasted it, so it's a Karav Lemezid. Now, finally, the Gemara comes back to the halacha that we connecting back to our Mishnah. What did I say in our Mishnah? That the child will be a mamzer. So now the Gemara says as follows. First over here regarding Truma. We see a tremendous power that Chachamim have. Amalei Rabba le Rav Chisda. Rabba said to Rav Chisda, Lididach to Amrit. What's your opinion? You said, Loi asav loi klom kol iker. When you give Tamei Truma, on Tair Truma, what you did is worthless. And meaning, Da'afila hi grive hadalativle. Even that measure of Truma that you did give, and minat Torah, it took effect, but nevertheless, it's like it's not Truma at all. It goes back to being part of the rest of the produce, which Truma was not taken from it yet. The question is, so what did you say? My time, what was the reason? This is all a decree. We're afraid that if we're not going to go so far to say that the Truma is not Truma at all, the person might not give Truma again. He might be negligent. But the question is, mi ikemidi the midiraisa have a truma? Is there ever such a kind of thing that you could say that minat Torah this truma is truma, umishum dilma pasha, and because of a concern that a person might be negligent, afkua rabbanan l'chulin, chachamim are going to come and say that what's truma, and it could only be eaten by a kayin, and any other Yisrael that eats from it is chayv misa b'dei shemayim. It's a serious ism minat Torah, and chachamim, because of their concern, because of exeda, they could consider it to be chulin. Could Bezdin make a decree? Could they institute something that uproots a truma over here? This is truma, or anything that's minat Torah? That's the big question the Gemara has here. Like I said, this begins a whole long sugi, which the Gemara will discuss this subject. Amalei, so the Gemara answers and says, so Rav Chisda answered back to the Rabba and he said, and va'at lo tisbira, yeah, you don't agree to this, that Chachamim have this power to uproot something minat Torah? And he brought him from our Mishnah. Vatanan, we learned here in the Mishnah, Havlad mamzer, that over here, when this woman got remarried to a second husband after she was told her first husband passed away, and she went back to her first husband, and she had a child from the first husband. That's minat Torah, that's a legitimate marriage. And nevertheless, Chachamim came and said the child is a mamzer. Avlad mamzer mizeh mizeh. So the question here is, Bishleim misheni mamzer. The child is a mamzer from the second marriage. We understand, because she was an Eshes Ish. Ela mirishaim, but from the first marriage, Amai. Why, if she would go back to the first husband, would the child be a mamzer? Ishtoihu. Minat Torah, this is his wife. And Yisrael, Ma'al Yehu, the child born is a perfect Yid. So how could Chachamim make a child into a mamzer? And then what happens if they make the child into a mamzer? V'kasharina and lebe mamzeres. What's the halacha of every mamzer? A mamzer can't marry a Yisrael. A mamzer could only marry a mamzeres. So they're being mater isser minat Torah by allowing this good Yisrael, so to speak, to go and be married to a mamzeres. So the Gemara answers, no, there's no raya from our Mishnah. Why? Because Amalei, Rabbi said, Hachi Mashmol. Shmuel said regarding our Mishnah, Asa b'mamzeres. This mamzer from the first marriage, she will not be allowed, or mamzer that is, it's not a she, the mamzer will not be allowed to marry into Klal Yisrael, because Chachamim are machmer and say that this child should be a mamzer. But at the same time, they're not uprooting the Islam and Torah. He's not going to be able to go and marry a mamzeres either. You can't marry either. Nobody. You can't. Yeah, he's stuck. You can't marry not a Yisrael and not a mamzeres. This is a very strong zayda. He can't marry mamzeres because he's minat Torah. He's still a regular yid. Minat Torah is a good yid. We're talking about from the first marriage. From the first marriage. Then that he's usher to marry a mamzeres. Amai kari la mamzer. So why is the Mishnah saying that this child born from the first marriage is a mamzer? Lo oisre be bas Yisrael. That he can't marry a bas Yisrael, so he can't marry not a bas Yisrael and not a mamzeres. That's so there's no raya from our Mishnah. Shalach le Rav Chisda le Rabbe biyad Rav Acha bar Rav Huna. So Rav Chisda sent to Rabbe through Rav Acha bar Rav Huna to tell him. Again, regarding this discussion that they had, is it not true that Bezdin could institute something that uproots a Isser min HaTorah? And here brought him another Braisa. Vatanya, we learned in the Braisa as follows. From what point would a person inherit his wife, which is a katana? So the halach is a person's wife passes away, so the husband inherits his wife. Now the thing is, usually we're speaking about a marriage min HaTorah, so the husband inherits his wife. Over here though, we're talking about a katana that got married min HaTorah. We're talking about a katana that was a yisaima. Her father never married her off. A father could marry off his daughter, which is a katana, and the marriage takes effect min HaTorah. But if she was a katana and she had no father, she's a yisaima, who can marry her off? Her brothers, her mother. But that's only a marriage midrabanan. We had this before in the Masechta. So in such a case, the question is, at what point do we say that nevertheless, even though the marriage is midrabanan, the husband could inherit her? So there's a few opinions there. When she stands up, meaning when she's a gedayla, once she's bas mitzvah. Beis Hillel says when the marriage is complete, full, after Edison and Kiddushin and Chuppah, then he will yarshin her. Rabbi Eliezer says mishitibal, once they have relations, then you're going to yarshin her. Miyarsha, he will yarshin her, inherits her, and if he's a kayin, he's allowed to be metamet to her. And also vayicheles begin truma, as we learned before in the Masechta, if he's a kayin and she's a bas Yisrael and she's married to him now, even though this is only a marriage with the Rabbanon, because of this marriage she can eat truma. That's the Braisa. So before the Gemara asks the question from this Braisa, the Gemara explains the three opinions. Beshame said Mishatamet b'Kaimasa that he can yarshin her after she becomes bas mitzvah. So now what does this mean? Even if the marriage was not complete, only the first stage of marriage, without chuppah yet. How could that be? Rashi here brings, we learned earlier in the Masechta that a woman that's married to only the first stage of marriage, the husband does not yarshin her yet. So how can we say here that he would yarshin her? For sure in this case he shouldn't. This is only a marriage with the Rabbanon. So the Gemara explains what Beis Shammai that is meant. So what he meant is, Beis Shammai was saying that she has to be already a gedayla, she has to be a bas mitzvah. That's what Tamid b'Kamasa means. And also tikana is l'chuppah. In addition, there has to be a chuppah as well. This is what Beis Shammai was saying to Beis Hillel. The ka'amrisu, you say that he would yarshin her mishetikana is l'chuppah. Once she enters into a chuppah, full marriage, even if she's still a katana. So Beis Shammai is saying no. Only if she's already amda b'kaimasa, she's already a gedayla mahanya la chuppah, then the chuppah is effective and he'll yarshin her. V'ilay lay mahanya la chuppah. But if she's not a gedayla, then the chuppah does not take effect at all. That's the explanation for Beis Shammai's opinion. Rabbi Eliezer, what did Rabbi Eliezer say? Mishitibal. Once he has relations with her, then he'll yarshin her. So the Gemara asks on this. Rabbi Eliezer himself said, "Ein ma'aseh katana klum." Whatever actions are done by a katana is worthless. So how does Rabbi Eliezer give any significance to the fact that he had relations with her, that now he would yarshin her? So the Gemara answers, you're right. What Rabbi Eliezer meant is, when she becomes a gedayla and he had relations with her, then he would yarshin her. That's the explanation for the Braisa, for the three opinions here. But now the Gemara says, wait a minute, this whole entire marriage is all midrabanan. Min HaTorah, there's no marriage here. So katani mi is, what does it say here? Yarsha, that the husband would yarshin his wife, even though the marriage is midrabanan. V'hahacha nimidayraisa avua yarisla. Min HaTorah, who yarshins this girl when she passes away? The father, because she still is the father's daughter, and she has no children. Who's the first Yairish of a person that has no children? The father. The father, min HaTorah, is the one that yarshins her. Rabbanan, Yaris Labal, and Avei Chachamim are uprooting the Yerusha min HaTorah, and they are saying that instead the husband yarshins her. How could the Rabbanan uproot something that's a Yerusha here, which is min HaTorah? So this is Rav Chisda saying, Rav Chisda was sending to Rabbi to ask him and prove to him here, you see, Chachamim could uproot something min HaTorah. Answers the Gemara, this is a different case. There's no raya from here. Hefker, Bezdin Hefker. Over here, there's a koyach Chachamim have regarding money matters. Chachamim have a koyach. The Bezdin has a koyach to take any money and to possess it and give it to someone else. They can be mafkir anything and give it to someone else. What's this power Chachamim have? Rabbi Yitzchak said, Minayin shehefke Bezdin hefke. How do we know when it comes to money matters, Bezdin has a koyach to confiscate money and give it to someone else? Shenemar, the pasuk says, this is by Ezra, whoever is not going to come for the next 3 days, as the Sarim and the Zikanim said that everyone should assemble, all of his possessions will be confiscated, and he's going to be separated from the entire congregation. So here we see that he was able to decree on the Klal Yisrael and on their possessions that he's going to confiscate their money. So here we see Bezdin as a koyach to take away, when it comes to money, to take away possessions. Another source for this concept of hefke Bezdin hefke, Rabbi Elazar Imem Mahacha. It says in the pasuk, Eila nachlois asher nachlo Elazar Kohen v'Yeshua ben Nun. Elazar Kohen Yeshua ben Nun. So they gave Yidden their portion in Eretz Yisrael, and then the pasuk uses the term v'Roshei ha'avos lamatais b'nei Yisrael, the Roshei ha'avos of the different shvatim of the Yidden. So what does this expression of Roshei ha'avos mean? The heads of the avos. V'chimayin Roshei meitzel avos. What is this expression of the heads of the fathers? What's the connection of heads and fathers? Either they're the fathers of the Shvatim, or they're the heads of the Shvatim. What this is saying is, Ma always manchilim b'nei. Just like a father, so when the father passes away, the child inherits from the father. So kol ma sheyirtzu, whatever they want, they give to the children. Afra sheyem manchilim esa'am kol ma sheyirtzu. So too, the heads of the Yidden, which is the Bezdin, they could take possessions and give it to whoever they see fit according to their takana as well. This is a koyach of hefke Bezdin hefke. But now the Gemara goes back to that Braisa. It didn't only say the fact that you would yarshin your wife, which is only your wife from the Rabbanan. It also says that a kohen could become tamei to her. So that still remains a question. How could Chachamim allow you to become tamei to a wife which is only midrabanan if menatayre she's not your wife b'chlal? So they're uprooting the issa menatayre. Umetamela, it said that it could be metameter, but v'ha'achad midaraisa via metamela menatayre she's not married at all. So it's only her father that could be metameter. Umedrabanan metamela baal, and Rabbanan are saying that the marriage is a marriage, and now the husband could be metameter her. How could we say such a thing? So doesn't this prove that Chachamim could uproot something menatayre? And says the Gemara, the reason is B'Shem the Havila mes mitzvah. She's considered to be a mes mitzvah, which is a mess that nobody is attending to her. So therefore, the husband can be metamet to her, because that's an exception. Over here, even the husband, though,
What about father?
Father as well. But over here, in this case, we're talking about the husband. That even the husband could attend to her, and the reason is because if he won't, so then we can't rely on anyone else. But the Gemara asks, so mi have a mes mitzvah. Why are we considering this woman, when she passes away, to be a mes mitzvah that no one will attend to her? But V'atanya, we learned in a Braisa that describes what is a mes mitzvah. Ezeo mes mitzvah, kol she'ein lo kaivrin. When someone passes away and there's nobody that's going to bury him. Kaira v'acherim oinen oisai. But if someone calls out and asks that this person needs to be buried, and someone answers and comes and buries him, and he's a mes mitzvah. So that's not a mes mitzvah. So why are we considering this woman here to be a mes mitzvah? So the Gemara says, Hacha nami here as well, kibindol yarsila, since she has no children that are inheriting her, so if you call and ask people to bury her, nobody will answer, and not necessarily will she have anyone to bury her. So therefore the husband is allowed to bury her, because she is considered to be a mes mitzvah.
So she's open for. It's open to whoever wants.
Correct. So therefore, this is not uprooting any isser min hatayra. The last point the Gemara addresses, the other thing it said over here is that even though this marriage is only midrabanan, but nevertheless the husband causes that his wife could eat trumah if he's a kohen. It said that she can eat trumah because of the marriage to him. How could you do that? If the whole marriage is midrabanan, how could you uproot the ism and atayre and allow this bas Yisrael to eat trumah? So what explains, but trumah midrabanan, it only refers to trumah midrabanan, which is bisman hazeh, or maybe trumah from fruits, which are only midrabanan. That only for trumah midrabanan, the Mishnah was saying that she can eat trumah, but trumah min atayre she will not be able to eat. So the conclusion of the Gemara so far is we have no raya that Chachamim could uproot the Issa min HaTorah or any halacha min HaTorah. And we'll see the continuation. There's a more long discussion about this in the Gemara here.